What's up, guys? It's Brandon from GrizzlyWorks RC. I just wanted to get an updated video for the LCG install. So there's a couple of changes that were made with the newest version that came out, or that's now out. So go over what we get in the package first. So obviously you're going to get the front and rear trays, which are going to look like this. Then there's this other little bag that has some extra parts in it, or has some other parts in it. This is going to have the Velcro pad for the battery. It's also going to have a few different sizes of limiting straps for the front and rear. That's one of the big changes with the new version, is it comes with, there's a mount now for a rear limiting strap for the suspension. Then there's going to be, let's see if I can get this on camera. There's going to be 2 screws and then these little 1mm spacers. The little spacers are for the newer trucks that have the thicker shocks on them, like these right here. Get that in camera. They will hit the sides of the tray and pinch the shocks a little bit. So you just have to put that as a 1mm spacer that spaces it out just enough so that it doesn't hit on any of the trays front or rear. Alright, so I'm also going to go over installing the electronics trays or side trays in this video as well, because it's going to be, well, the first 20 that are sold of this, get those for free, but then also it's going to be an option to purchase them together, as well as a couple of other things that I'm working on, but won't get into that at this time. So let's get started on the install. It's pretty straightforward. There's only a few screws that you got to take out. We'll start with the front. So first you got to undo your shocks. Just drop those to the side. You only have to undo them from the top. That loosens everything up, and also that frees up your tray that's up here. So next thing you're going to do is unplug your servo and your motor, because once this front tray comes off, that needs to be unplugged. The next thing you're going to do is pull one of the sides of your front bumper mount, or one of the screws for your front bumper mount out. That'll just allow the shock towers to spread a little bit, or not the shock tower, sorry, the frame tray, or the frame rails. So then you got 2 more screws on either side that you're undoing. Alright, once those screws are out, you can spread the rails apart a little bit, and this pops right out. Next thing you're going to have to do, you can put the truck to the side for a minute, you got to take the ESC off of this front tray. Put that to the side. Now you have to undo the screws for the body mount. That's going to go onto the front tray that this kit comes with. And when you do this, just take note of what screw hole these are in, because it's the same on this front tray. In this case, which is for a base camp, the mount goes, or the body mount actually just gets put all the way into the front tray. And this just goes right in there. Push them in. And I'm just making sure the holes line up inside there. These don't have to be super tight or anything, because once they're in there, that tray, or the mount, isn't going to move anywhere. So when you're tightening these, you essentially just go until they start to get really snug, and then you stop, because if you keep going with them being plastic, it will eventually strip out the hole. The next thing you want to do is you want to take one of these 2 screws that this came with, and if you're going to be running the limiting strap, there's a screw hole right here on the front that you put this into. You're not going to tighten it down all the way. It's just enough for that strap to hook onto it. So kind of see if I can zoom in there. Yep. All right. So now we are going to get into installing the front tray as well as a front limit strap. So while this front tray is off, if you know you're going to be running a limit strap, it is easier to go ahead and get it the the limit strap onto the link first before installing the tray. So what we're going to be doing is putting the limit strap around this section right here. This is on a completely stock SCX24 base camp, so it still has the 3-link, but this works exactly the same with the 4-link setup. You just put it around both of the links instead of just one. So you got to undo, get this to focus again. Yep, you got to undo this screw right here that holds the link, or if you're running 4-link, there'll be it might be a single or a double screw. It depends on what servo tray you're working with on here. And you are going to undo that link so that you can pull it up. I'm going to just go ahead and start off with the longer limit strap. I have actually not done a base camp before, so I'm not entirely sure which one it's going to need, but I have a feeling it will be that one. That's what I've run on C10s and Broncos and stuff like that. So this is, I believe, the same front length links as those. So what we should look like now is this limit strap is right around that link, and then it's going to go around up forward right there, or up to the front right there. It's going to go around that part. It's not going to stay in place when you're installing the rest of this, so just let it kind of hang out down there, and then we can get it in place when we need to. Okay, so the next step is to actually put the LCG kit on. This doesn't want to focus again. Put the LCG kit on the actual frame rails. So on here, there are some little sections right here and right here. Those lock into the frame rail the same way that the stock piece does. So just focus again. So we have the front bumper detached. We're going to spread the frame rails just a little bit, and it pops right into place there. Be careful with the suspension taken apart, or the shocks taken apart there. It might try and drop your drive shaft out, which is what was just happening. But you can just pop it right back in. So next, we are going to use the same screws that came out of here for the stock part and screw this part in. There should be 4 screws holding this in place. And when you're tightening these down, you don't want to go crazy tight with them. Just tighten them down so they feel snug, and they will hold in place. They're not going to back out of these parts. But you don't want to go super crazy with it and then end up stripping the holes out and not being able to use them. Alright, so next we're going to put the bumper right back in place. Alright, so next you can either use your tool that you're using for the screws, or some tweezers or pliers or something along those lines. And you're going to put the limit strap right around the front there. And it looks like that was too long. So now I'll get to show you how to do this without taking the front tray off. So I went with the long one. It was too much. I guess on here I'll have to go with the shorter one. So from this, if you run into this issue and you need to redo the strap with the front tray already on, all you're going to do is just drop this down and unscrew your front upper link or links. With that front tray in, it is actually easier to do this with a 4-link setup because you can do 1 link at a time depending on how they're screwed in place. With how long that was, I'm just going to go ahead and throw the short one on here. Then you can take your tool, and that link or that strap will pop right around that front screw in the front tray. And now, if you notice, it is even with this the shock's not on, it holds the suspension up in place. Okay, so now we're going to work on getting these shocks put back. And I personally just kind of guess when I'm doing it, but I tend to go somewhere on the bottom row around like the second from the rear screw hole just to start. And so I'm putting this on right now without those little 1mm spacers just to show you what'll happen. So if you see, it is not screwed all the way in, and it is already touching the tray and frame rail here. With that little 1mm spacer, it pops that out just far enough that you don't have to worry about bending the shock. So now that that spacer's on, I can go ahead and screw this part in. And again, you just want to go until it feels tight and then stop. I know I've said it a bunch, but you can't stress that enough. Like the screws on here don't need to be extremely tight because they will hold in place. With these little spacers, sometimes you do have to thread the screws into them. It's just a limit of what the printers are able to do. Alright, and that's tight. So the front's done. And you can see servo cable there. Maybe you can't see. It looks like it unfocused again. Alright, so now you can see it does droop a little bit, but it doesn't droop fully. And you still have all your articulation side to side. So now we're going to get into the rear tray. The way I like to do it is I start with taking the stock tray off, which is just 4 screws again. Now I know it will be tempting to use an electric screwdriver on all this stuff. I have done it in the past as well, but the likelihood of stripping these plastic pieces out with using that goes way up. Yeah, so if you can avoid it, don't use an electric screwdriver on them, but that's your call. Just like the front, you want to undo 1 screw on the back bumper, or back bumper mount. That way you can spread the frame rails apart a little bit. Next, we're going to take the shocks off of these shock towers, because those are also going to need to go with this kit. Or I should say, come off with this kit. Let's look at this rear tray real quick. So one of the next changes on the new one, on the new setup, is there are actually 4 screw holes down here on the bottom, and that is to better fit the positioning on the back here of the frame rails. So because this kit does work for the long frame rail and the short frame rail, and earlier models of these I don't believe had this many holes in it as well. So that just makes it so that you can slide it around, because you only need to use 2 screws on each side of this tray. You don't need to use all 4 holes that are on there. So it just makes sure that regardless of what frame rails you have, what factory frame rails you have, this should fit on there without an issue. Alright, so just spread the rails a little bit and it pops right in place. And as you can see, there's a lot of room for it to slide around. So if you do have like the trailer attachment, the trailer hitch attachment from Axial, it does still work with this kit, and I personally like to slide this as far forward as I can so that it can get as much weight forward as possible. So I have it all the way forward on there, and then the only thing you have to do is just make sure that you have screw holes that line up once you do that. Also, if you are going to run, I completely didn't even think about this, if you are going to run the rear limit strap, this is where this would be the time to install it. So on the back here, let's see if I can get this to focus again. Alright, so on the back here, right at the very back, there is a small hole here that this screw goes into. And you are going to go part of the way down just so it's in there with enough teeth to stay, but it needs to be high enough that the strap can go around that. Alright, so now we're going to go over putting the actual strap on the rear. And with this being 4-link in the back, it's a little easier than the front. You can take the tires off, it'll make it a little easier to do this install, but you don't have to. So I personally am just going to do one at a time. Pull that out. I'm going to go ahead and try this with the short one again. Put it around 1 link. And then for 4-link, what I like to do is go around the top of the links themselves So the strap is actually up top there. Just to get it, the goal is to get that strap as centered as possible on there so that it still has your articulation, but it will prevent the suspension from just letting go while it's going up or downhill. Now these holes might be a little bit tough to thread at first, just because they are printed kind of small, to make sure that there's material there for the screws to bite into, but they will go in with a little bit of work. One of the things to watch out for, just take it slow when you're putting these in, because especially with the shocks, the little pivot ball mounts for the top of the shock, if they are worn out at all, or if they're like really used, they can be a little bit weak. And so if you're having a really hard time getting those to go in, you may want to stick like a thumbtack or something like that slightly into the hole first, just to spread the outer part of it out a little bit, because those pivot balls can snap if you're not careful. It's not common, but it can happen, especially if they're older. With this back tray, I'm going to kind of just mirror what I did on the front and see where it sits. So I'm going to go into the bottom row and the second from the front hole on there. And remember, just go till it feels tight, because with this plastic, it's almost like it's the same as like a lock nut on the back side of it. It's not going to unthread itself like it would if it was on like just a metal nut. All right, so that's all installed. And now we will take our tool and just bring that strap around the back side of it now. So what I like to do is look at it from the side once it's actually on there and see how level the truck sits. So I'm going to pull this camera off the mount, and so let's see, looks pretty level. It's actually sitting a little high in the back, but that could also be the suspension. But now pushing the suspension all the way down, it is sitting a little bit high in the back. So I will readjust, move I'll probably end up moving the rear shocks, because I don't think I want to go any lower in the front, but I'm going to move those rear shocks probably up and forward, up one row and forward. And now with that, it looks a lot more level. So the next thing to do is to not forget to reattach that rear bumper mount. Sorry about if my arm is in the way in any of these shots. It is kind of tough to get a camera angle here in the garage, but making it work. Alright, so now we got the limit straps on, we have the trays in. The next is going to be attaching the ESC. So I have been pretty lucky with just being able to reuse the tape that's on the bottom of these straight out of the box. However, it's not always the case, so you might need some double-sided tape. Also, I've seen it called servo tape before, at least a long time ago. That's what we called it. But just any double-sided tape. I've had really good luck with the 3M body panel tape for like automotive stuff. It sticks to just about anything and sticks really strong. But the way I like to put these on is I tend to run all of my inputs on one side. I think it just makes it a little bit easier to access those. But really it's up to you. And I just kind of center it on there, press it down, and I can pick the truck up using the ESC. So it's on there tight. Then you got to plug your motor back in. Just kind of mess with it. These newer motors have that magnet on there. But yeah, just make sure you plug the motor into the right spot. I don't like how that magnet is up against the drive shaft, but let's see if I can pull that out. There we go. There. Now it's not touching the drive shaft anymore. Next, we will put on the Velcro. I tend to use the rougher side on the truck itself and the softer side on the batteries, only because I know it's not going to hurt anything, but I still feel like it's better to have them not scratching each other up when they're in the battery bag. So just center the Velcro on there. If you want to, you can use just half of this if you wanted to use Velcro on something else. I have found that with some of the trucks, you can't use the Velcro on the ESC itself because it will actually cause it to hit parts of the truck, and it'll cause clearance issues. So I just use the tape because it's thinner. For the servo, if you are using the stock servo, this is going to be too short to get to the rear tray. So you'll need some sort of extension cable. These are available on Amazon. You can find them on most hobby stores will have them if you have a hobby store in your area. And it's just literally just an extension cable. That's all it is. There's a couple of ways you can run this. You can run it, the easiest way is just to run it in through there and let it come across. You don't run into clearance issues that way, and it keeps everything pretty much out of the way. I say you don't run into clearance issues, and I'm going to run into clearance issues. There we go. All right. You got to make sure you leave yourself a little bit of slack up front, though, because the servo needs to be able to go up and down. And then it plugs into, on this one, it's the steering. If you have a different one, it's going to be channel 1 for steering, and or whatever it says for servo or anything like that. So yeah, that's about it. And now everything should work. You put your battery on there, plug it in here. The newer batteries that I've seen have long enough cables on them to reach there without an issue. Some of the older batteries had a really short power cable on them because they were really just designed to work with the SCX24 in stock configuration. And you'll have to have a battery extension as well. There's no way around that. Most aftermarket batteries have a much longer cable on them and will reach without a problem. So I think that is just about it on here for the LCG set. So now real quick, we are going to get into installing the side trays. Super simple install. There are only 4 screws that you have to undo and reinstall on here. And it is, let's see if I can focus this. So it's the 2 middle screws on the skid plate on either side. So you don't have to do anything with the links or anything like that because there are holes built into these trays for that. The center holes here, and then the outer ones are much bigger so that they can fit around the screw heads. So no need to pull them apart that way or pull off links or anything like that. It's just the 2 center screws. So one thing to note on here is that there is a slight angle on one side and the other side is completely flat. The angled part actually goes up front and it gives you some extra tire clearance so that your tires aren't scraping, especially on the shorter wheelbase trucks. Like I'm pretty sure they're discontinued at this point, but the deadbolt trucks had a shorter front end. You just unscrew these 2 middle screws, and you do have to take both of them out before installing the tray. The screw holes are countersunk, so the head kind of sinks into them. I like to just put the screws in there, and I do the raised section up top. It gives a little bit better clearance, or like to be able to mount electronics and everything, as opposed to putting them on with this a little bit, or with this piece up top. They'll kind of center themselves with those 2 screws that are already on the rails. And that's it for the the one tray. Super simple, but it gives you some extra mounting surface. Especially if you're not using stock electronics, you can run like batteries and ESC receivers, things like that, all on those side trays and not have to try and figure out where to put everything. And then as a bonus, it's also putting whatever you mount to them a little bit lower than the typical trays would be, or than the typical mounting points would be. So you're dropping as much weight as you can down lower. And that's it. We are all done with the electronics tray install. Just a couple minutes and they're on. All right, I think that's it. If you have any questions about anything, or if I didn't cover anything specific enough for you, please feel free to message me. I'm more than happy to answer questions or help you out with a specific install. I guess a little bit of information also with these things like aftermarket motors. So it'll fit the longer 050 brushed motors. A lot of brushless motors with forward facing are going to run into clearance issues on the front tray. What I have done in the past is I have flipped that transmission around and skid plate, so flipped the whole thing backwards. You do have to work on drive shaft stuff because it's not always going to fit perfectly after that. But then you can have a rear facing motor and you'll still have your plenty of battery space up front, and this tray, like I said, you can slide it back slightly, which will give you plenty of battery space or mounting space for electronics as well. Yeah, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.